What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you another video about the classes and archetypes in Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, which is currently in beta. This time in particular, we are talking about the Cleric. A couple of things just right off the bat, just to get them out of the way. The Cleric is a divine caster. Their caster stat is Wisdom. Clerics are defined by their chosen deity, as well as their domains that they choose. The deity and the domains have a lot to do with the alignment. Now, there is no alignment requirement for the class. However, depending on the deity your cleric wishes to worship, which is where they get their divine casting ability, of course, that's going to affect their available alignments at the end of character creation. For instance, if you want to worship Asmodeus, you can't exactly be a good guy. However, that actually goes a little bit farther. And while the deity restrictions themselves are usually still kind of openish on the alignment spectrum, there are a couple of the domains that require specific alignments. Well, not like super specific, but like lawful or good or that kind of thing. And those are the lawful domain, the good domain, etc. So just keep in mind, some of the domains are actually also alignment locked. Now, realistically, and hopefully I've already started, there are, frankly, too many domains to go over. But they are, like, the focal point of the cleric class, in my opinion, simply because there are, like, 30 domains. I think the actual number is, like, 32 or 33, at least in this game. So each one of those domains will pretty drastically change the way that you play a cleric. So at 1st and 8th level, each domain will give you specific features. So the first level will, of course, just come from picking the domain, basically. And then at 8th level, you'll pick up an extra thing. And then each domain will come with a list of domain spells. Now, the domain spells you will get, just as bonus spells when you get the appropriate level to use those spells, just for having your domain. Because while clerics do, of course, use the cleric spell list, they are, however, prohibited from using spells that are contrary to their alignment. So for instance, a good cleric shouldn't be able to use the animate dead spell because it is, tagged as an evil alignment spell. So basically any spells that would oppose their moral beliefs aren't going to be available to your cleric. That said, clerics get a nonsense amount of spells per level, which is why you'll see in a bit that their character sheet is actually pretty well blank, because most of the features you get come from your domains and everything, not so much the actual class you chose or your archetype. The last thing I want to mention before moving on in the spellcasting vein of things is that clerics get access to domain spell slots. You will get a domain spell slot for every level of casting that you can use, which is essentially a bonus spell that your cleric can cast. However, the only spell you can put in a domain spell slot are your domain spells from your domain. Just some things to keep in mind there, and I hope you guys find them useful. Again, there are just tons of domains. Most of the class choice and everything is going to happen with your domain choice because there's just so many. In addition, though, obviously, this is a class, and we get archetypes just like every other class. With those things in mind, let's talk about the base class and its actual archetypes now. The base class is going to have the class skills of Knowledge Arcana, Knowledge World, Persuasion, and Lore Religion. And for class proficiencies, the cleric will be proficient with all simple weapons, light armor, medium armor, and shields except tower shields. Now, clerics will also be proficient with the favored weapon of whatever deity they chose. Each deity has a favored weapon that the cleric will automatically gain proficiency in. Now, clerics will also get access to an ability called Channel Energy, which comes in positive and negative energy form. Depending on the deity you chose, the archetype, and a couple other things, this might be locked. For instance, the Angelfire Apostle, which we'll get into just a minute, which is an archetype, they basically get positive energy channeling just as a default regardless. However, some of them will be able to choose depending on, things like their deity and their alignment. Some of them will actually be able to choose between channel positive energy or channel negative energy. Now, the main things to know are positive energy is healing while damaging the undead, whereas negative energy is damage to the living and healing to the undead. All clerics will, of course, be able to pick up Detect Magic as well, giving them the ability to identify schools of magic as well as magic items, etc., primarily a dialogue ability. Now, as I mentioned, and I just want to reiterate, because so much is the domain for clerics, the base cleric has a blank level up sheet, basically. simply because most of what they do comes from their ridiculous spell list, as well as the domains they picked up. Now, a base class cleric will actually get to pick 2 domains. That brings us to the Angelfire Apostle. In exchange for losing one of their chosen domains, the Angelfire Apostle picks up a bunch of healing abilities. First things first, you will get 1 fewer spell slot per spell level than a base class cleric would. However, you will still be able to use your domain spell slots at the appropriate level, even if you don't have any spell slots for that level, which comes in addition to losing your regular domains. You will also pick up extra channel, which will let you channel your chosen energy 2 additional times per day, which is normally a feat you can choose, but Angelfire Apostles get it as a base. And then, like I mentioned, the Angelfire Apostle is forced into positive energy, which is because of their archetype. It's like a healing thing. So this is where we get into it. It starts at level 5 with Cleansing Flames. The Angelfire Apostle will be able to unleash a blast of flames for 1d4 damage per spell level of the highest spell level you can cast if you choose to use up a channel energy use every time you cast a spell. Interestingly enough, though, half of that damage will be fire damage and the other half will be divine power or divine damage, whatever you want to call it. So basically every time you cast a spell, you'll be able to expend a use of channel energy in exchange for doing a little more damage. And then at level 5, we also pick up the other part of our archetype, which is Versatile Healing Channel. So starting at 5th level, you'll be able to use 2 uses of your channel energy ability to cast Remove Blindness or Lesser Restoration as a spell-like ability. Then at 7th level, that can be Remove Disease or Remove Paralysis. And then at 9th, it can be Neutralize Poison. At 11th, it can be Breath of Life. At 13th level, it can be Heal. At 17th, it becomes Restoration. At 19th level, it can be Resurrection. So this is why the Angelfire Apostle gets a kind of forced healing channel as opposed to negative energy, is simply because of these abilities right here. It's going to take up 2 uses of it and let you cast other things in place of it. And that brings us to our Crusader archetype. This archetype, again, sacrifices one of its domain choices. However, you will pick up 5 extra bonus feats. However, they are from a specific list, which you should be able to see here. Now, the interesting thing about this list is that it actually lets you bypass normal class or level-based prerequisites for this list. However, you can see here that some of them are like level gated, which kind of helps balance that out a little bit. That brings us to our Devilbane Priest. So again, we sacrifice one of our domain choices for a number of benefits. Here, we pick up a heavy armor proficiency, as well as an ability called Demonic Knowledge. So whenever we make a Knowledge Arcana check, we will gain a bonus to that check equal to half of our class level at a minimum of 1. In addition, the Devilbane Priest will also actually gain 2 teamwork feats. Now, typically speaking, these should be teamwork feats. However, you can also choose spell penetration or greater spell penetration as one of those feats. But other than those 2, it has to be a teamwork feat. That brings us to the word I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but it's whatever Tristan's archetype was from Kingmaker. Now, here you get to keep both of your domain choices. However, the big thing here is that you don't get to use armor. So you basically won't have an armor proficiency at all, and you'll basically be like, just using robes and stuff. However, you will pick up Blessing of the Faithful, which lets you grant a +2 sacred bonus to attack rolls, skill checks, ability checks, saving throws, and the AC of an ally until your archetype's next turn. However, you can choose to expend the use of a channel energy while you activate this that will increase the duration to a number of rounds equal to the number of dice on your channel energy. And then we also pick up Domain Mastery. You will get to choose 2 domains like I mentioned. However, you will choose a primary domain and a secondary domain. And every day when you rest to restore your spell slots, you will be able to choose a secondary, well, I say secondary, but another domain to replace the spells of your secondary domain. However, the abilities from your second domain will not be replaced by the other choice, specifically just a spell swap on the domain spells for this. I hope I explained that clearly. I know that's a little confusing. And then lastly, they get the Bonded Holy Symbol. Basically, you'll be able to once per day restore a spell that you've prepared for that day. And that brings us to the Herald Caller. They lose a domain slot and can only use light armor. However, in the trade for those things, you get a bunch of summoning abilities, which starts with Call Heralds. So a Herald Caller will be able to channel stored spell energy into summoning spells that she hasn't prepared ahead of time, which means that you can lose a prepared spell in order to cast a summon monster spell of the same level, any of them. Then at 4th level, they receive Mighty Heralds. So you'll basically get Augment Summoning as a bonus feat, which will make your summoned creatures more powerful, +4 enhancement bonus to Strength and Constitution for the duration of the spell that summoned them. And then lastly, Numerous Heralds. At 8th level, a Herald Caller receives Superior Summoning. So basically, this means that each time you cast a summoning spell that conjures more than one creature, you add 1 to the total number of creatures summoned, which basically means if you have a summon 1 die 4 of something spell, it will automatically summon an extra one. Now, I know where people's minds are going to go when they hear that, and that is, oh my god, does that stack with the Mythic Path summons that every Mythic Path gets? Because my mind went to the exact same place, and unfortunately, the answer to that is, at least currently, no. So I saw that class feature and I immediately went, I want to know if my summons from Mythic Paths get added to that. So, couple things to note. 1, only a handful of the summons from Mythic Paths actually summon more than one creature, which is a requirement of this class feature. But even the ones that do, say summon a pair of or something like that, which doesn't seem to apply. I'm assuming it wants like a random number of 1 die 4 type stuff, like most of the summoning abilities, which I'm assuming is why they're not affected. So sadly, no, the Mythic Path summons don't seem to be affected by this, which, believe me, I was also very disappointed by, because as soon as I saw it, I tested it immediately. There you go, guys. There is everything to do with clerics. Honestly, pretty cool class. Like, I'm not super into like religious warrior types, just period, to be honest. However, there's just tons of choice when it comes to this class, and you just inherently, as a fan of CRPGs and RPGs in general, I've got to admire that. So while the actual archetypes do certainly change things, reality is most of the class and the choice here comes with the nonsense amount of deities and domains, which will drastically change how your cleric plays. Which, honestly, I just think is really cool, despite this particular flavor not being for me. With that out of the way, truly, thank you guys so much for watching. There's a link to my merch store down below if you would like to help support the creation of future content. However, regardless of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.